Why does Carly Valancy need to meet Spencer Kier? You're watching Just Press Record. It's Mr. Audience of One meets Mrs. 100 Days, meeting a person a day. I mean, just the networking master herself. This is so cool. Creatives and rule following versus rule breaking, art as repetition towards reputation. We figured that out towards the end. And what makes a great brand, what makes great businesses, what makes great habits. You're going to love watching these two meet. Jack Forehand, let's roll some clip.
Artists and creative people in general are some of the most naturally good communicators. You have a baseline where you're already ahead of a lot of people, but how so many actors in particular, they follow the rules too much, where it's just especially with theater, it was this is how the industry works, and this is how you get an agent, and how you talk to a casting director. And there's so many rules, which is crazy because it's it's an industry full of the most creative people in the world. What are we doing following all the rules?
We're all trying to conform to this particular API rather than trying to say, no, this is how I communicate, even if I'm a bit illegible at times. Because I think you'll find, especially in the age of the internet, you'll end up finding people with a similar API to you if you broadcast enough, if you put out enough feelers. And it's more important to express your strangeness that attracts other people than it is to become extremely normalized and smoothed out and attract the majority of people who are like that.
Practice, to me, has shifted from stepping outside of the box of the rules of how I'm supposed to engage with people or how I'm supposed to network. Now my strategy is, how can I break every rule of networking in a way that it just catches more people's attention, that is also honest to me?
You only get that surprise and awe if you put back, I think you said, you put back in the just, right? You go back to a more authentic angle. Otherwise, it's just this chat GPT kind of super normalized way of conversation. But you're only going to catch somebody by surprise if you use some kind of strangeness that you only have.
Yes, absolutely.
Gratitude is such a underrated initial approach to this because everyone always thinks from a transactional place. Mm-hmm. They're I'd like to reach out to this person, but first I don't think they'll respond to me and I can't get anything out of them. A simple expression of gratitude, to your point and your experience, can open so many doors.
You're watching Just Press Record right here on Cultish Creative YouTube, the show where I take two strangers from my network of misfits, miscreants, and mysteriously curious people, and I'm so convinced that they should meet, I send them a blind calendar invite with no warning of who else is showing up and we just press record. So don't forget, Just Press Record is brought to you by the nice people at panoptica.ai and Epsilon Theory. Check them out online. And without further ado, who are these guests that I thought had to meet? So this first guest, all bright lights, big city energy. No comment on jazz hands. So yes, the stage and musicals, but also the singularity of connection, as in, listen, footsteps. Now is the only time you can hear footsteps on Broadway. That is a Guys and Dolls reference. And if you didn't get it, that's at least specifically for my wife who will smile at it. And this acting energy with writing and performing as part of her formal training, it helps that it makes no sense and all the sense in the world when you start finding about her meet a new person a day for a 100-day challenge that she stopped counting when she got over 500 people, and connecting without just clicking connect on LinkedIn. You know I love that from the first time I heard about it. Shout out to Christina Garnett and Anne-Laure Lecomte for making sure I saw this message. Reach Out Party, Tether, Momentum, CV Creative, and a Good Omen on Substack. Let's make a thing and meet a person together, shall we? It's Carly Valancy.
I'm speechless. That's amazing.
We'll take speechless because you won't be in a second, because I have to introduce you to this next guest, because if he were a store in the 90s mall that still exists in my heart, he'd definitely be Spencer's Gift. And I'm sure he knew I was going there from the get-go. But he's got a little something for everyone at face value. But as you wonder how it even got there, you start to realize how eclectic the person had to be who picked the inventory that shows up. How many micro communities can a single person be aware of let alone tap into. This guest is all that and a trippy poster with or without the gag gifts. Hopefully you can handle this audience of 2 today: product leader, education industry, Edmentum specifically, angel investor, online writer, and bring back audience of 1 already. Damn it. If Spencer's can still be open in my mall, I'm waiting for you to just be open on YouTube again. Have no fear. It's Spencer Kier.
Wow. Incredible. Nobody's ever introed me like that. I'm curious how long these take you to write.
A shockingly short amount of time on the self-imposed deadlines that I make sure you're just getting whatever pops into my head first. Hence, Guys and Dolls and Spencer's Gift now getting combined into this one
I love
today.
it. It reminds me a lot of like slam poetry.
That is basically where this is coming out of.
It's
Very,
great.
very close. Also, great reference. Just heard a great Saul Williams thing the other day, and I was like, I need Saul back in my life. All right. You're going to guess by the end of this episode. I wrote down on the back of this card why I think you guys should meet. That just says your names. It's going to be wrong because it's my guess from before you met, but we're going to see what you think afterwards. I think I want to start here because we got to get a couple of these things on the table. Easter eggs in the introductions. This challenge, Carly, can you just tell Spencer about your meet a person challenge? Because this is so cool.
Yes. Hi, Spencer. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I 5 years ago, I was in the theater industry, and I decided to reach out to one person every day for 100 days. And it totally changed my life, changed my career. It got me, I mean, I continued after the 100 days, as Matt mentioned, but reaching out to strangers has been the most instrumental tiny thing that I've done for my life and my career every day, almost every day, every weekday. And so I decided to do it again 5 years later. And now that I'm working in a completely different industry and I'm a new mom, and yeah, my life is just like super different. So today is day 36. Sent my reach out just before this call. But yeah, that's my challenge. And I think the first time I did it, I was really focused on like changing my life right away. I was in my early 20s, and I, like many people who turn to networking, it's kind of like, I need this thing now. I need a new job, or and in my case, it was an agent. I wanted to book a national tour. But what I learned through the process was that it was so much more about finding my own voice and my own goals for the long term than it ever was about like the opportunities that happened in the short term, which many did, which was cool. But now I think it's just really cool to kind of come back to it from the perspective of like, what do I want my life to look like in 5 years or 10 years? And how can I practice finding my people and reaching out to people that I really admire for like my future self? So yeah, that's my challenge.
I have so many thoughts and questions. As a Matt, you might feel me trying to take over the lead here, given my how many
Your
times I've done
proclivities?
podcasting. I've never actually
Ask
been
away,
on,
sir.
on the other mic. So I've done, Carly, for you, I've done like 80 podcast episodes myself, but never been on the other side.
Whoa. You're going to ask questions, but I think this is important before you ask the question. I hinted at it, audience of 1. Just tell Carly what that is, and then I do really want you to come back to the question.
Well, it actually has a nice connection to what she was talking about. So first, it might be worth some context setting. So a handful of years ago, I work in education technology, and I was wanting to make more connections in the space similar to you. So I started a podcast called The Future of Learning and Work, which was just focused on education, people working in education, and the future of work. I did 20 plus episodes, put it on ice, and then I felt myself being called back to doing podcasting, but I wanted kind of a broader lens. And I really just wanted to talk to anybody I was interested in at any point in time. And so I started this one called Audience of 1. As you can tell by the title, it's all about me and whoever I'm interested in, and I don't really care if anybody else is listening. But the connection here is that I found that podcasting was an incredible tool for turning cold outreach for having higher response on cold outreach effectively. Like my whole thinking about it was, I've had very little success reaching out to people I want to talk to. When you say, hey, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes? Everybody says no, or doesn't even respond. But if you say it's a podcast, well, now they have an artifact that sounds a bit more official, even if the person asking them is, has no real status. And so that's why I did it for multiple reasons, but one of them was to help build my network through having higher success with a form of cold outreach. So a lot of connection there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. I
You're
love it.
starting.
And I love what you just said also about just like having an artifact, something that you can take away from a connection or a conversation that's like so powerful and interesting. And I think a lot about, because a lot of people will ask me like, oh, are you just like getting like 100 coffees with people? And I'm like, absolute opposite. Like I will rarely ask for like a call or a coffee with someone. And people are generally like pretty surprised about that. They're like, well, then what are you saying? Which we can get into.
Yeah, what are you saying?
Well, I mean, it depends. I think, first of all, I have 3 goals for this challenge. So I chose 2 professional goals and 1 personal goal. And basically, I try and use that as a filter because I don't know if you know the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 7, which means I'm like obsessed with everything all times. So it's like a helpful filter for me to keep myself focused in a way. So if basically my 2 professional goals are, 1, to find like dream clients for my growth consultancy, like people that are like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm working with this person. The second goal is to expand opportunities for visibility for myself, whether that's reaching out and asking to be on someone else's podcast or collaborating on an article, or like kind of what you're saying. It's just like, how can we meet, create an artifact, and share that with people who might enjoy it? And then the third goal, is my personal goal, is to create really cool experiences for my family. So right now that's taking the form of finding sponsors for my son's Formula One themed first birthday party, which has worked in like the most insane way ever. Like it's crazy. It's crazy how you can just ask for things that feel unreasonable and how many people are like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of that. So yeah, those are my goals, and that's typically like what I'm saying, but I love this idea that is sort of like, maybe you don't have to have a podcast. I mean, having a podcast is like very helpful for this and becomes sort of like an obvious way to connect with cool people. But thinking about like, oh yeah, how could I reach out to someone and think about it from the perspective of like creating an artifact that would be really beneficial for them instead of asking for a call that is like beneficial only for me. You know what I mean? That's really cool though. I love that.
Yeah, I think there's a number of kind of formats it can take. It can be an interview newsletter where it's a bit more asynchronous. It can be you have a curatorial newsletter where you say, hey, I found your essay, I love it, you plug it in there. But anything you can do that's an extra bit of incentive. As an aside, Matt, I think I'm starting to guess about what the connection is, but I won't throw it out there
save it for the end
and ruin it. Yeah.
This is the surface level. We're going to keep writing down.
Oh, okay. We're still early.
Well, what were you thinking? I feel like you had a follow-up. I had to get the audience of one thing on the table because we had to bridge that quickly. But I think you were going to ask a follow-up either about our activity or I'm just curious if that inspired something.
I have a number of follow-ups. One quick comment. Yeah. Something that stuck out to me is, and I think there's somebody on Twitter and Substack that maybe both of you have come across. His name is VisaCon Veerasamy. But he has this idea of drawing 100 owls. And I've talked about this a lot on a bunch of different podcasts. But the idea is attempt to draw an owl for 100 days. And I promise you at the end of the 100 days, you'll be able to draw an owl. but nobody does a thing for 100 days. And so it's the same thing with like podcasting. I think 99% of podcasts stop at episode 20. There's probably other comparisons across industries or mediums.
Yeah.
And so Carly's thing is like, I'm going to reach out to X number of people and I'm going to keep doing it. And I think I'm sure some people look at that and they're like, oh, it's so simple. It's like, well, why aren't you doing it? Why isn't everybody doing this? The kind of the compounding returns you get on it are obvious if you sit back and think about it, but very few people take the time to do it day in, day out.
Yeah, I love that. Georgia O'Keeffe also has she has this book called To See Takes Time, which is like one of the most beautiful titles in the world, I think. But there's a story in the book about how she drew the same. It's like it looks like a puff of smoke, one of her like oil paintings, and she would draw it hundreds of times. She would just sit there and do it over and over and over again. And she said that it wasn't necessarily to like get better at it. I think that ended up being the result, but it was just to like get inside of it and learn about it. And just that it became like the beauty of that piece of art became the practice of doing it itself. And then now when you see it, like what it symbolizes is just like the dedication of like doing something over and over and over again, and how beautiful and challenging that can be. And I love that idea that it's like, what is it? I think it's like a Charlie Munger quote that's like, just take a simple idea and take it seriously. It's like so famous for a reason, but it's just like, yeah, it's such an obvious thing. And I really like believe that reaching out or doing anything, drawing an owl, that is sort of like uncomfortable, is very similar to like a meditation practice, where it's just like you never want to do it in the moment, but it has insane compounding, life-changing effects.
Yes. There's also this there's this great quote by G.K. Chesterton that I'm not going to remember verbatim by any means, but maybe we can plug in the show notes or something. But the takeaway is that repetition is divine, right? That's how you reach perfection, is by doing a thing over and over again. And so he talks about how every day God wakes up and he brings the sun up and he does it again the next day. And when he was creating flowers, he created this flower and then this flower. And it wasn't that it was repetitive, it was that each thing was kind of unique in and of itself. And that practice of repetition, I think, to flip from like the outcome side, which is what I was talking about, like the compounding returns, but then to what Carly was talking about, like the practice itself. Yeah, that's beautiful. I'll have to check out that book.
It's gorgeous.
All right, so this is, Carly, specific to you, and this is me with my soft spot as a former music major too. The whole practice thing. And especially when you're a wildly ambitious young person who wants to be on stages, which it's a type.
It's type.
It's a type. There's the practice with the ambition. And I feel like one of the most valuable parts about being any type of child performer or person who wants to be on stage for a phase of their life, you internalize what the role and use of practice is and divining towards these outcomes. But it also gives you a whole lot of perspective on how you start to understand the goal, because you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again so many times. I'm just curious, because you've already hinted at like there's different phases of life. You as a mother now planning a birthday is very different from you at, I don't know, 22 or something probably. How do you make that? What was the transition of like what practice meant to you?
Oh man, such a good question. I was also talking to, I don't know if you know Sasha Chapin. He would be a really good person to have on here, but fun story. I was doing a Substack live with him yesterday, but he was a stranger to me. I thought he's like an incredible writer. He's such a good writer. And I, at the beginning of this year, was like, going through my who the hell am I after I just had a baby phase. And I was like, I really want a mentor, not a coach, but a mentor, someone who's like actually invested in me and my future, someone who is ahead of me, but not that far, and someone whose life I like very much admire, someone who can give me feedback that is kind of brutal. And I reached out to him and asked him, I pitched him in this like kind of really funky, weird way. He was into it. And since February, we've been chatting bi-weekly and it's totally changed my life. But we were talking yesterday. So that's like a fun reach out story. But we were talking yesterday and he was saying how like artists and creative people in general are some of the most naturally like good communicators. Like you have a baseline where you're like already like ahead of a lot of people, but how so many actors in particular, and I don't know if you find this like coming up in music, Matt, but it's just like how many creative people actually are they follow the rules too much, where it's just like, I mean, especially with theater, it was like, this is how the industry works, and this is how you get an agent, and how you talk to a casting director. And there's so many rules, which is crazy because it's like it's an industry full of the most creative people in the world. Like, what are we doing following all the rules? And so, to answer your question, practice to me has shifted from stepping outside of the box of like the rules of how I'm supposed to engage with people or how I'm supposed to network or reach out or just supposed to do things and operate inside of my own career, to like slowly breaking that box so far open that now my strategy is, how can I break every rule of like of networking in a way that it just catches more people's attention, that is also honest to me. But like, for example, one of like the rules of, and you may have seen this, like a rule of like when you're sending an email with someone, remove the words, and I think this is very much targeted at women too. It's like, remove the word just, remove the word sorry, because it's like it comes off as apologetic. It's like, I actually will put those words back in because it's the way that I speak, or it just feels like way more honest and casual, and I don't have to put on this, performative version of myself. And so I think, yeah, I think the practice of it has just been like trusting that it's good for me, like trusting that something wonderful is going to happen from it, whether externally or internally, whether it's a discovery in my own head or like a really cool opportunity, something great's going to happen. So just kind of keep one foot in front of the other, just keep going on the days that I don't feel like it. And then just trying to like break more of the rules, and be the like creative artist that I am. Yeah.
The rules
I,
thing has to be screaming something in your brain right now, Spencer.
yes. So probably this actually is a cross section of like 3 kind of essays I'm simultaneously writing in the background. I have a very slow process around essay writing. But you touched on authenticity. You touched on, I think, uniqueness or kind of spikiness or eccentricity. And I think in kind of this globalized competitive environment, most people shift to the norm, to the mean, and they try to do things the way everybody else is doing them. They do the one-click apply on LinkedIn when they see 5,000 people have done it. They send that one, chat GPT-ified cold email, and people really don't think about not even like the back doors per se, but just not doing things the normal way and in a way that stands out. And I think that is actually, like, again, in this globalized competitive environment, you have to find your unique traits, your unique qualities that help you stand out in a way that nobody else is. Cultivate those, lean into them. And that's really where you start to get those compounding returns in a very, unique direction that nobody else, on a kind of plane or a trajectory that nobody else can compete with you on. so yeah, I think about that topic a lot, and there's a couple quotes around it that always come up for me. One is Orson Welles in an early interview. Somebody is I forget who the interviewer is, but they say, how did you get so good at cinema? And he's like, ignorance. Ignorance is like, all of my confidence comes from ignorance. And the way that connects back to this is like, people who don't start to conform to an industry norms have such an advantage because they start to see things, in this first principles way. They start to question all the things. And the other one, just to throw it out there, is Jeff Bezos in his final shareholder letter. It talks about not letting the world smooth you out. It's, you're like a rock in the ocean. This is my metaphor now, not his. But you're like a rock in the ocean, just perpetually being thrown against the sand and the waves and whatever else, and getting smoothed out. And it's like, again, your spikiness, that thing you do that nobody else does, that's what you need to lean into. And that's where you need to find, you need to triple down on.
Oh my God. I love that. I also love how many like quotes, you're just like a person.
I don't know the quotes. I can go and find them on
No, you
Twitter.
know
I know the reference to the quote. Yeah.
I love that.
I appreciate
wait,
that.
I have a follow-up on that. I'm so curious about what like your version of that is like in your work when you think about your uniqueness or spikiness, or like how you operate in a way that is uniquely different from the norm. What does that look like?
You're asking a question too close to home right now. I don't have a good answer yet.
You just leave the room.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think my internet's cutting out. I don't have a good answer, and I think part of the reason I'm doing this exploration and writing about it is in hopes of finding it. I've come up with a whole bunch of heuristics around it. Now I'm going to get into the quotes again, but like Naval talks about, do the thing that's play to you and work to other people. People talk about do the thing that you wanted to do when you were a kid. What's the thing you do with no effort? So I think there's all these heuristics. I think maybe unfortunately for me, and I think this ties into maybe part of the reason Matt brought us together, is I have shiny new object syndrome, and like I'm constantly pulled into a bunch of different, he said, micro communities in the intro. I like sitting at the center of this like Venn diagram of like 70 different things. And I like being able to go 85% deep on something really quickly in the matter of weeks, and then saying, okay, I'm going to step out of that. So I just like being kind of literate across a bunch of different things, but I'm not sure I specialize in anything. One reading to that is maybe like the best I've come up with is something that allows me to be T-shaped, in that I can have a lot of breadth across different things, but I go deep in a way that allows me to either write about or talk about or invest in a broad range of things. So like some career paths you might think about as like venture capital or a writer or a podcaster. So yeah, the short of it is I don't know. I like consider myself a bit of like a dilettante, and like want to mess around with a bunch of different spaces, and sometimes see that as a negative, and other times as a strength, and I'm still trying to sort out how to apply that. I'm curious if you have a response to that first off, but then also would love to hear the same for you. What that trait is for you.
Yeah, I think like I would say I've like maybe recently landed on what that thing is for me, like 2 weeks ago. Like I think it's like a very
good timing for this podcast.
Yeah, real
right.
good time for me.
All right.
But I'm still, again, like not super sure. It's just, it feels exciting to me, and it feels like, when you have like one of those aha moments that you're like, oh, I've been waiting years for this. But I do think like, first of all, just the bravery to just say like, I don't know. I just love that, and I feel like more people should do that. I think it's beautiful, and it also is so true. And Emily Sundberg, said this thing, or actually, I don't think she said it, but she interviewed someone on her Substack that said it, and it's like I can't stop thinking about it. And it like really helped me a lot over the past year. But she said, or he said, someone said, um, your niche is not what you do, but it's how you talk about, like how you do it, or how you talk about it. I'm butchering it, but basically, it's just like just your own voice could be your specific thing, and just like I don't know. I think the process of you like figuring it out is part of that, which is cool.
I like that
Uh,
quote a lot. It's all about
yeah.
everything's been said. It's about how you say it, or kind of
Yes,
filter through
exactly.
which you say it. But yeah,
Exactly.
continue. I'd love to hear more about this epiphany you had.
Well, when I left theater, um, and so basically I was like in final callbacks for Juilliard for my MFA when COVID shut everything down. And it was devastating. Like it was completely, not only did I lose all of my, various performance and marketing jobs, and I just was like doing the New York thing. Like I was like living my best life. And yeah, everything just stopped. And I think that is obviously true for so many people, but I think what was particularly devastating to me was the like future that I had started to like envision graduating from Juilliard and doing Shakespeare and all these like that was just gone. And inside of the those first couple of years of COVID, or I guess the first year, I pivoted into like doing my own things and into tech, and ended up getting really involved in like early stage startup land, and working at working at an ed tech startup for a couple of years. And I was like I just went so deep into that, and I kind of was like, you know what, theater, I always felt like um I didn't get any closure from that part of my life, and I would never want to go back to performing. Like I'm so grateful for the opportunity to explore ways that I can bring my like artistry and my training in theater to other places. And like many artists discover, they're really good at marketing and storytelling. So that was cool. And um but I recently have just been like, how do I like actually consider myself an artist now that I'm no longer working in theater, working like in the Broadway community? And um I think, and again, this is like very fresh, so I don't even know, and who knows, but I think that it's um bringing in specific areas of my training that have completely like shifted me at a molecular level. But like, I don't know if you know about Suzuki training, for example, but it's like a Tadashi Suzuki invented this like movement training for actors. And Anne Bogart started this company in New York City called City Company, and she's been a huge mentor to me, and I've like been obsessed with all of her writing and things like that. But it's like, oh, how can I bring like hardcore theater training, and how could I bring some of the things that I might have learned at Juilliard to something that is so traditionally sterile and like not fun. And like networking is such a like shitty topic. Am I allowed to curse on here? I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely you are.
Yeah.
And it is a shitty topic.
It
Let's
is.
be
It's just like
honest.
it sucks, and it sucks for a reason. And I think, yeah, I'm really excited about exploring what it could look like to bring some of the most like deeply human training, like true acting training, those principles at least, to something as like cold as networking.
I love
Yeah.
that. I think that we need a lot more cross pollination of
Yeah.
practices. Like I think about if you think about any domain as it's progressed, the people who have taken the next step or had an edge or been head above the rest have found some other kind of practice that they pulled in that's different from is common in the space. So I think about I have a background in basketball, so like know a lot of players started doing more like yoga, Pilates even than they've done historically. Started doing more plyometrics when normally it was about like Olympic lifts back in the day, or not even working out. And the point being just that people are always looking for that different lens through which to view their own work or to enhance it. And at least for me, that's incredibly interesting because it's a space that's entirely foreign to me. So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to pull this idea into it because I wasn't expecting this. And now Spencer not knowing what this is, it makes it really interesting to me. The Suzuki method is just one of these fascinating things that I feel like a lot of people outside of music or music education, or if you don't have kids, you're probably not exposed to what this is. Could you just, to the degree you can, Carly, I'm putting you on the spot, can you explain just in simple terms why the Suzuki what it is and why it works to Spencer? I really want him to reflect on this stuff.
I really think even people inside of like that have had a lot of music and theater training don't really know what it's not a classic. There's a couple of big teachers out there, and there's a couple of like you may have heard of like method actors, you may have heard like there's the Meisner technique. So there's like a lot of these like big ones, but Suzuki is sort of like this really underrated but really powerful. Basically, when I was in college, I took a movement class, and it's all about the whole point of it is just to broaden your awareness to like outside of yourself. So essentially, a Suzuki method is based on the idea that like it's not me, it's we. It's like whoever's in the room, like we are an ensemble, which means like the way that I move and speak and act like affects another person across the room and vice versa, and how like essentially like how do you create like way more intentional movement, and how can that training make you a better actor? And I think it's like very fascinating to think about that through the lens of networking, because the best like communicators are not thinking about their own fears and insecurities around reaching out to someone. Like, of course we all have that. I am terrified all the time when I am reaching out to someone. Absolutely. But I think that what so many of us miss is the opportunity to think about what the recipient, how like what their state might be when they receive an email like this, and how we can be generous in not only what we are like offering, but how we can be generous in like the way that we are trying to connect with people, and just broadening our perspective to like outside of ourselves a little bit more.
All right, I'm adding one thing to it so we can both take in Spencer's response to this. Starts in Japan. You've seen it with like the little kids all playing violin, and you're like, what the hell is going on with all these little kids playing violin at this level? That's usually Suzuki. And one of the core ideas, besides this ensemble approach, which I love the way you framed it, and I know nothing about it being used for like acting teaching.
I know nothing about it being used for music. That's amazing.
So it starts with music, and it's on the premise that this is a very Nassim Taleb idea too, that I think you'll extra appreciate for this reason, Spencer. Like birds don't go to Harvard. What's it? The telegraphic fallacy or something? Birds don't go to Harvard to learn to fly. Like there's no bird flight training textbook that they all have to get before they get their certification and go in the air. Like you just learn how to do this. Part of it's innate and part of it's told to you. So the whole Suzuki method is like, why are you giving a kid a book to learn to play violin? Come into a room. We're going to have a process we're going to take you through. You're going to learn to play this instrument the same way you learn to talk. Because your parents didn't have a book and teach you to talk from a book. They just talked around you, and eventually you caught on, and they leveled you up as an ensemble, as a group. And it's this group reinforcing learning process where it's like, no, you're just going to keep picking it up by getting these reps in. And it is crazy how fast people can learn when you teach them in this format. And you're like, don't even worry about reading a note on a page until years into this process. And if you want to go there, then we'll teach you that too. But you don't need that. We can just learn it by ear. What do you think about that in the group setting of learning and also just as a method for exposure? Thinking of your T-chart again here.
The first thing that comes to mind is I have two kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And my son has the 1-year-old, especially shown an interest in music. And we do like, the community music classes that you commonly do at this age. But I'm interested in this now. I'm going to look into it. I'm not sure I have any immediate reaction to it. It's fascinating and something I'm going to have to dig more into. I think it was interesting to hear that each of you had your own application or interpretation of it across creative spaces, and then also simultaneously talking about applying it to networking. So the utility of it across spaces is interesting.
How much did you think about it? And especially with doing the interviews, I'm curious because your curiosity is what brought you to the table and got you to ask somebody to come on one of your shows with you. And a big part of that was asking the questions, was almost this type of format. You're like, no, you're the teacher. I'm putting you in the teacher role, but I need you to now engage with me in this conversation. That feels like your mode of learning almost.
I see where you're going. Yes, absolutely. And I think it starts, I consider myself, and my wife would as well, maybe not as much for her as I should be, but I'm a very empathetic person, often more for like strangers than my immediate community. But I think it's all grounded in like empathy and attempting to understand the other person. So it goes back to earlier what I was saying about ensuring that you can offer the other person an artifact, but always trying to think in terms of where they're coming from, their level of comfort, what they want out of this. And so I always try to strike this balance between what I want to get out of it, which is, of course, the artifact also. It's a connection that I want. But I want learnings, and the way I get learnings outside of their already public works is by pushing them on their ideas and questioning them and, trying to press on particular load-bearing aspects of their arguments. But you also have to balance that with not coming across as too antagonistic or making them uncomfortable. So yeah, it's very much this give and take. This like kind of tennis flow to it of, although you wouldn't do this in like a competitive tennis match, setting them up to be able to like return the lob. So yeah, hopefully that, I still need to learn more about this method and understand, but I think this concept of like flowing across the mic back and forth and ensuring you're considering the other person's perspective and desires in the conversation is critical.
I also feel like for both of you as hosts, I'm sure you do, the podcast, I'm blanking on the name and the host, but his name's Sam. He interviews a lot of actors. He's known for like his very specific questions where, he brings on pretty famous people and they're like, oh my God, I've never been asked that question before. He goes deep, like he's like, when you were 6, you had this experience. So, and I
can't think of his name either, but it's exceptional for those questions. That's
Nardwuar.
Nardwuar is the music example who my brain goes to.
Yes, that was very
but
cool.
yes, no, this is very distinct studio
We'll
space.
put in the show notes, and by we I mean Matt will put in the show notes. But it's like it's magnificent to listen to for just the response of like someone being like, "Wow, I've never been asked that before," and it just seems like, I mean, Matt, when I got your message about doing this, I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. And that's so cool. And that is like going even beyond what an artifact could be, which is just like something different that you've never done before. And yeah, I'm very curious. Seems, Spencer, like you have that as well when it comes to like, you're not, you're challenging people and like pushing pushing, on questions that they've answered before to get to something deeper. And that's really,
Yeah.
really interesting.
Attempting to. And I think, yeah, you hit on something critical, which is, I think, a key kind of like determinant of success, or maybe as an anecdote about whether the person enjoyed the conversation, is, did you catch them in a moment? People will often say this just to buy time, like, oh, that's a good question. But you can usually tell on their face when it's a really good question and it puts them back and they have to think about it. And
Yeah.
maybe once the mics are off at the end, they'll touch on that as well. But I think that's a good, Matt, you've probably found this. I think that's a good signal that you've had a good conversation. You've stretched them, you've pushed them in a direction that they haven't gone before. And it's often difficult. Like, I don't know, Carly, if this is your first podcast being interviewed, but it is mine. It's very different for people who have not been interviewed before. Everything is fresh and new. It's an open field for the interviewer. But I've interviewed people who have been on 50 podcasts before, and it's like they have these kind of rote ways of thinking. You like ask this question a particular way, they've got this rehearsed line that they don't even have to think about. So to get new material, new ways of thinking, you have to push in particular directions and be mindful of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why this format is so cool and was so interesting to me, because it's like I have been interviewed, but not in this way, and not in a way that I didn't feel like I already knew what the topic was, or you know what I mean? But yeah, it's also there was one more thing I wanted to say about that. I think I lost it. Oh, yeah, there was one more thing that I wanted to pull on, which is that I think it's so similar when you're sending cold emails too, or it's just like
Yeah.
when I get the response from someone that's like, I don't get a lot of emails like this. I'm like, yeah, that's such a win, and it's like you just get that same kind of, what is it? Like, it's like a feeling of awe or surprise where someone's just like taken out of their daily routine. And that's like what a cool opportunity we all have to give that gift to someone else.
And to tie it back to earlier part of the conversation, you only get that surprise and awe if you put back, I think you said, you put back in the just, right? Like you go back to a more authentic angle. Otherwise, it's just this, this like ChatGPT kind of super normalized, mean conversation or like way of conversation. But you're only going to catch somebody by surprise if you use some kind of strangeness that you only have.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, say more about the strangeness that you only have component. Spencer, you go first. Like, how do you even begin to start to tease that out of yourself?
I think it goes, I always start with the heuristics that I already alluded to. I think I have this essay, I'm forgetting the name of, which is bad. But the idea is all about deep introspection. So I think like whether it's journaling, meditation, conversation with people who know you well, I think now like conversational AI can play a part, although I wouldn't over-index on it. But you really need to you need to remove all these like obstructive layers of kind of societal impression, your parents' opinions, what everyone around you thinks you should be doing. Attempt to parse that and get to the core. So I think it's a very introspective thing, but there's also, that's the internal element, but I think there's an external element of like, you have to make contact with reality. You have to do things, you have to get feedback. Action produces information. And so in that sense, I think you just have to start with your best guess about what it is you feel attracted to, or I like the term like compulsion, like what do you feel compelled to do in a way that you're feeling pulled rather than you're trying to push into it. And then you iterate off of that. But I think a lot of people, you have to do the two kind of concurrently or in like this larger feedback loop, because I often find myself getting stuck in analysis paralysis of just being in the paper, just being in my head. You don't make any kind of progress. You don't start to check things off your list. But yeah, I think it's I say this as somebody who I said earlier has not found their, or it doesn't feel like they've found their thing. I've knocked off a lot of things that I know is not, which I think is just as important. So take all of this with a grain of salt.
Oh man, I love that. It's specifically like the compulsion piece. That is so like that is such a cool way to say it, and just the thing that feels like it is pulling you. Especially because when it comes to our careers, I mean, I spent much of my career doing this too, and I think a lot of people spend a long time white knuckling the thing that they're supposed to be doing, and definitely how I've burned out in the past. But also just like it is, those things compound too, right? Like when we like push into the thing, we're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this because either other people are or someone told me or whatever. Um, Whereas like the more that we can pay attention to what pulls us, just the more that can lead us to like where we actually want to be and the work we actually want to do. Um, yeah, I think that strangeness for me, especially within the context of connection and like meeting people, and I just believe so much that our lives are made up of people in them, and it's just like the most true thing ever. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about who I want to meet, and what I want to say to them. But it's I think that strangeness typically lies in like, what do I actually want to say to this person? Like, either if I knew they were going to say yes, what would I say? Or if I knew it was going to be like received in the way that I wanted to. I think social stuff is like weird because there's so much extra, like, I don't want it to come off in a certain way, or I don't want to be rejected or judged, or, there's like that we're so fragile, I think, with ourselves in that way. But yeah, typically I'll catch myself, doing what I'm supposed to do or saying what I'm supposed to say to someone, whether it's like writing an intro that makes me sound competent, or whether it's like, asking for something in a way that, I don't know, that is going to like come off well or something. And when I catch myself like deleting and retyping and deleting and retyping, I'll just like tune in to like, okay, what am I actually like feeling right now? And oftentimes I'll just like say that. So like I sent an email this week and I was so nervous typing it. I just said like, I'm literally sweating while I'm typing this email. Like, that's insane. And I had plans to delete that sentence, but at the end I was like, well, that's very true. So I'm going to leave that in. Um, I talked to someone last week who also said that one of their first jobs that they got, I think this is such a cool idea for someone who's like early in their career, but one of their first jobs was reaching out to someone that they admired, a CEO of a really successful tech company, and saying, I really admire what you're doing for XYZ specific reasons. I don't think I'm ready yet, but one day I'd love to work with you. I'd love to work at this company. And that's just like so I think it's just like typically, and it was very true for him, but typically it's like we overdo it, we overcompensate, and we remove any of our strangeness or our insecurities to like seem normal. And no one is. And we're all just like insecure and afraid. And that's like so very human. And I just thought that was so cool. He ended up getting the job, but just to say, actually don't think I'm ready for this yet. But one day, like that's how beautiful is that, right?
And how
And
few people would
similarly,
send that email.
I know. And similarly, yeah, just saying the thing you're afraid to say oftentimes is, I think for me, like helps me get into my own strangeness or my own, just like, yeah, being myself, because no one else is going to say that in the same way.
I think you touched on this uh, you, you had a couple things that stuck out to me. One was this idea of almost like anti-compounding. It's like the things you do
Yes.
that you white knuckle, but you do for a decade, those have compounding effects too in a way that you don't want to go. And there's a lot of momentum to that. And this is like, the idea of golden handcuffs is like, I've gone down this career path, become the VP in an industry I don't want to be in. And so it's, as much as it is about finding the thing that you want to do, it's also about not doing the thing that you don't want to do, which is very difficult, the gravity of it. But I think it all comes from this downside limiting. We all want to limit the downside rather than maximize the upside. And that's what kind of pushes us to the mean. It's you mentioned how I don't want to be perceived in a particular way. I don't want to show my insecurity. I don't want to say the thing I actually want to say for fear of how I'll be perceived. And this is maybe a bit too technical, but in software, there's this idea of like an application programming interface, an API, and it's like a standardized way that one application talks to another. And we're all trying to conform to this particular API rather than trying to say, no, this is how I communicate, even if I'm a bit illegible at times. Because I think you'll find, especially in the age of the internet, like you'll end up finding people with a similar API to you if you broadcast enough, if you put out enough feelers. And it's more important to express your strangeness that attracts other people than it is to become extremely normalized and smoothed out and attract the majority of people who are like that. Yeah, that was a bit of a ramble, but I really like that idea of anti-compounding and like just saying the thing you want to say. So uncommon.
And picking out the person you want to say it to. And I'm curious. And I think you have a couple of stories, so I'll let you dealer's choice on this one, Carly. But you've got some stories of people you've reached out to that you've been like, oh my God, I love what you're doing. And then it turns into that actual collaboration later, even if you didn't intend for that or that wasn't the mission statement on the initial outreach. Pick one of these stories. Give one to Spencer.
Yeah, I got to pick the one that's like most recent because this has just kind of like been unfolding the last couple of weeks. But I mean, it goes back to what you were saying, Spencer. It's sort of like paying attention to like the people that like to where you're pulled to like to what pulls you. And I think one of the greatest realizations that I've ever had in my first 100-day challenge years ago was just that everything that I love, this is like so obvious, but everything that I love, someone or a group of people are responsible for making it. And most of the time, I can find their email pretty easily. It's just like that. I think for someone that doesn't know where to start or that is like, oh yeah, like I want to build my network full of fascinating people, but I don't know where to start. It's like, what do you like? What are you interested in?
Yes.
What is your favorite book, your favorite podcast? Who is responsible for making the apps that you love? Like I love watching like when I go to the movie theater, I love watching the credits at the end and just being like, look at all these people that made this thing. Like there's so many people doing stuff.
Such an industry person to be like, key grip. I could have been a key grip.
No, literally. Yeah. But it's just like, it's just fascinating to me that we all have things that we are pulled by, that we're passionate about, but that so few people like think, oh, I should just tell that person that I like this thing. And it is so rare to receive the kind of email or DM or whatever from someone that's just like, I love this thing that you made. And here's what I love about it specifically. And here's the line in this specific essay that changed the way I thought about this. Thank you for writing it. Just saying thank you to a stranger because I mean, you both know this as a person who makes things. Like it's hard. It's hard to make the thing you want to make. It's hard to put yourself out there. It is so difficult to make creative work. And to hear from someone that they're like listening or reading, it means a lot. And it opens the door for a connection, whether that's now or in the future. And so, all this to say, I had this realization and I reached out to someone that I just really loved. I read a bunch of her work. This was about 5 or 6 years ago. I reached out and just said, I love your work. And I shared something specific that I love about it. And I did not expect this person to even respond, but I couldn't even dream of like an ask. I would never ask someone like this to jump on a call. That would be so weird. I would never, like, this is like a big deal kind of a person. I would never, I didn't even feel comfortable asking a question. Um, and I just sent like a note of gratitude and she responded, which was like at the time, I was the best, moment of my year. I was like, oh my God, this person responded to my email. So cool. And then 5 years went by and I have been going through this challenge. I've been thinking about who are the people that I connected with the first time around that I want to maybe be a little bit more brave with. And I'm trying more. I can't do it every day because it's like hard, but I'm trying to send more scary emails, like emails that I'm like, oh my God, this feels very risky. And I followed back up on the same email thread that I had originally sent 6 years ago. And I asked to interview her. And I asked also to speak at the university that she works at, which was very, very, very scary. But it was so cool to be like, hey, a lot has happened in the past 5 years. I named a couple of things. I also have been paying attention to this person's career and that was so cool to just say like what a lifetime ago that was. This email was. And so anyway, I'm interviewing this person and she said no to the to like a video or in-person interview. I really want to do an in-person interview. But she was like, send me questions and we can have a dialogue. And we have literally exchanged 10 emails over the past 2 weeks, of just like me asking questions or responding, like essay format. One of the coolest experience. I don't. Is it gonna like change my career? I don't know, but it's one of the coolest things that's ever happened, and it's yeah, it just makes me believe in like the power of doing this work all over again. Yeah, super cool.
I think gratitude is such a underrated initial approach to this because everyone always thinks from a transactional place. They're like, I'd like to reach out to this person, but first, I don't think they'll respond to me. And second, I can't get anything out of them. I don't think they'll do anything for me. And it's like, that's such the wrong way to start the interaction. And just a simple expression of gratitude, to your point and your experience, can open so many doors. I'm curious for you, how you decide where to double down. So a lot of your experiment is just this initial touch point, but how do you decide where to double down on something? Obviously part of that is out of your control if they just don't respond to you, but for the people that do you just kind of gradually continue the conversation and nurture it? Or is there like usually this inflection point similar to this interaction where it's like, oh, I want to take this to the next level?
Yeah,
What are you kind of looking for in the interaction?
I think it's person specific. I think there are some people that I don't even intend. Like, for example, I've been reaching out to some people expecting them to not respond or expecting to get a rejection, but knowing that I'm doing it for myself 5 years from now. Like I think I didn't know what I was doing at the time, 5 years. I was just sending a note of gratitude to someone that I really admired. And I couldn't have thought about where maybe 5 years from now I'll be in a position where I actually can ask a question or I actually can ask for something. And it's much easier to respond to an email thread that I already have. So I'm thinking more about that now with some people, but I also think yeah, it's very person specific of like, okay, if this person can help me with a goal that I currently have, um, I'm gonna ask now. And even if I get rejected, like I'd so much rather get a rejection than like no response. because a rejection, I just, no is not always final. It's like, it would be so cool to be able to follow up in a year or 5, and who knows, like reopen the door. But, yeah, I think like there's so many examples of things that I like. For example, I was throwing an event in New York last week, and I was trying to find a sponsor, and I'd met someone on LinkedIn, and 2 weeks later we were co-hosting the event. It's like that happened very quickly. Like that's very rare, but it happened so fast. And but I think like I typically prefer to play the long game a little bit more. And I have this tool that I built called Tether, which helps me like keep track of all of these people in a way that like is soothing for my nervous system. But there's like a nurture cue at the bottom where when I connect with someone, but I'm like, I don't know, maybe they responded, but I'm like, I don't really know what to do with this. I'll just like put a reminder for myself to follow up in 6 months or a year. And it's like nice to kind of just close that loop, but I still have, an open door at some point.
Say more on gratitude for a second, Spencer. I'm just curious. You lasered in on that in a way. I think you know a thing or two about this.
I think first and foremost, I don't express gratitude enough. I think most people probably don't. Yeah, I think it's just, it's a much more human and relational way to engage with people. I'm speaking first and foremost about, interpersonal communication, interacting with another person. I just think it kind of grounds the conversation and the potential relationship in a much more real way. Then like people can very much sense when you come to them looking for something and it's off-putting. And so it just feels more genuine when you start with gratitude. But I think just for yourself as well, there's this kind of configuration or operating as such that it's all about more, and never reflecting and looking back on and appreciating what we have, and across so many different across so many different institutions and stuff. It's always like, if you look in your 9 to 5, your manager is always asking more of you, like, what more can you give me here? Your company's asking for more of you. Your relationship with your spouse, you're always trying to give more of yourself. So yeah, I think it's just a good means of reflection and grounding, pulling you back to reality. Yeah, I'm not sure I have anything particularly novel to say about it other than it's good.
It's good. It's in short supply.
Yeah.
We'll take that. I took a couple of notes. Can we talk for a second about some of the notes I took? I took a lot of notes. This is a good sign. This is always a very, very good sign. I want to go. I'm going to ask both of you this question. This is my selfish question that I'm starting off with. And it's built on Spencer's whole audience of one thing. Because you don't know this, Spencer, but like that was one of that name has rolled around in my brain.
Such a good name.
For a very long time. Because this format, so number one, I do other interview type things where I deal with people who sometimes are in the interviewer mode of like, I've a lot of media trained people for some of the finance podcast stuff that I do.
Yeah.
And I'm very determined to like, even if it's one chink in the armor, 45 minutes in, I am obsessively looking for the chink until I get there. But this audience of one concept, this is my understanding of this podcast, and I'm curious what you think. It's basically like the audience is of two, obvious reasons. But also it's like, I think the only job that I have on this is to make sure you guys, like the guests, have a good time. Because that's part of the wild card audience thing. You might know who I am reaching out to you saying, I want you to come beyond this, and I'm going to introduce you to a stranger with some intentionality. But I'm curious. I don't feel like it's audience of one. It feels like it feels like audience of two. Am I thinking of it right? How do you experience this?
Are you saying for your particular podcast or in general?
Yeah, this is unsolicited feedback that I'm getting free on the clock with Spencer Kier. Go right ahead.
Well, I have to caveat it by saying I think I've only ever done one interview with multiple guests. And so I think the dynamics of it
It's
are
different.
very different. You have a much harder job, especially when those people are not familiar with each other, although you're doing an exceptional job. Yes, I
Compulsion.
think it's I think
That's what it is.
it's it's layered, and it's like a double, or in this case a triple entendre, and that it's like it is an audio. It first and foremost starts with you reaching out to us, and so it's selfish in that way, understandably, and that's fine. But we're also, at least in the way that I use the title for my own podcast, the idea was that we're only ever in our own skulls. And so like, even if Joe Rogan's podcast is being consumed by millions of people, you're only ever listening to it by yourself. You're like in the car or at the gym or whatever. So it's only ever a kind of lonely medium, as opposed to if you go to theater or see a film, there's like this joint element to it. So yeah, I think it is layered in that you have to be thinking about yourself, what you're bringing to the table, what you want out of it for the other people, but ultimately what they want out of it as well. But I think to go back to so much of this conversation, if you're thinking too much about what the prospective potential audience might get out of it, and you're kind of bending towards them, you're going to miss so much of the value that you yourself, if you're the only person trying to consume this thing is going to generate and pull out of the person. So I think you do have to be a bit selfish in a way to get the most out of it.
That's fantastic. All right, Carly, I have a question for you on this one here. The Spencer we were talking about following the rules too much as artists.
Mm.
And there's this idea of, I think when you're in an industry where the ladder is like so narrow and so abstract,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost, you're like, if I go in the slightest deviation from this, I will inevitably fall and die, because everybody's just told me ever since, and it's somewhere in that like high schoolish age into college or professional age, where they're like, you're crazy. Like, that's not a real job or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That terrifies people into being like on that singular path in a really, really narrow way. And I'm curious with how you understand this now. Like, you've got 10 different things going on, minimally. You've got 40 different paths inside of this. Have you completely abandoned the idea of any like paths and ladders altogether? Have you completely rejected and inverted this idea that used to torture you?
I think instead of a ladder, I think about my own work as more of an ecosystem, and it is all connected. And though it may seem in some ways slightly disparate, there is, I think, a very clear core, even for my consulting work. It's like that is connected to this core idea that is what I could spend forever talking about and thinking about, which is like finding your people and how beautiful like the moment of making a great connection is, and the electric conversations, and just like everything I can do to further that for myself and for others is like, that is sort of the core, and then everything has to be connected to it. And if it's not, I shouldn't be doing it. And it took me a long time to learn what that core is, and how to say no to things that were not serving that day. But yeah, I think that um, the ladder is not built for creative people. Like, if you are a creative person, if you don't want to have the golden handcuffs on, and some people do, many people do, and that's great, then the ladder is not built for you. It's not going to serve you, even if you stay on it and are successful in climbing it, Um, and I think that is like a hard lesson to learn, because it forces you to face yourself and figure out your own way of doing things. But yeah, there's a Brandi Carlile just came out with a new album, and there's
Shout out
this
Brent
it's
Carlisle. Not enough mentions on this
totally
podcast.
shout
Yeah.
out.
All
Shout
right.
out to Brandy. But the album is called Returning to Myself, and that's sort of like the title song. And it's just like, I think she says in it, like, returning to myself is a lonely thing to do, but it's the only thing to do. And that's definitely how I've felt a lot about my life now in the past year. It's just like, okay, how do I, knowing what I know about how to be an adult, how do I then return to myself? Um, and yeah, the latter is not involved.
I
Beautifully,
think that
beautifully said. Oh, go ahead, Spencer.
no, just to throw in there, I think there's the conventional wisdom is, and I even talked earlier about like having some kind of compounding returns. The conventional wisdom is like, go down a single path and do this thing over 30 years and you'll reap the rewards. And I think you had mentioned, Matt, Anne, I'm always bad at pronouncing her name, Anne Lecomte.
On lore.
Oh, sorry, wrong person. On Lore.
Yeah.
And
great person.
she had this book called Tiny Experiments or something like that. And I think that's such a better way to orient the work you're doing. It's hard with the reality of like you need income, you got to provide for your family. But at least on the side, as like a series of side projects, having these small things you're stopping and starting and evaluating, and having a collection of them, even if disparate, and treating like you are multi hyphenated, right? And allowing each of those things to express across different projects. It's great if those can roll up to a singular thing, because you get the compounding returns then at this macro level. But even if not, the expression of those things in their own lanes is enough. And I think far too often people don't allow themselves to do that because they don't see how there's like this unified compounding path. But I think treating yourself as like always in beta, always in an experimental mode, is a more enjoyable way to do things.
You want to add to any tiny experiments thoughts, Carly?
I mean, I love Anne Lore. She was actually original in my 100 days. She was one of the people that I reached out to. I was an early member of Nest Labs. And I just remember being like, this could be better. And I reached out to her with a pitch deck for helping build her community, and here are the ways that I think it should be better. And there were some like logistical things, but then some, other things. And she was like, okay. And we worked together for a good 7 or 8 months. It was amazing. But yes, I'm such a huge fan of hers, and she's such a great example of someone who very clearly has built such an amazing ecosystem of different projects and work around this like very clear center idea. She's amazing.
Remarkable in terms of clarity. And I think this is related to this. And I'm giving you this question for Spencer and Carly. We'll see where he lands, and then you're going to build on this one.
Good.
We were talking about, and this is something that I've been just obsessing over lately, the idea of brand as feeling. Like a brand evokes a feeling. That's what the role of a brand is. And we brought up how making art is repetition. We were talking about the owl, we were talking about the cloud, and the idea of doing something for 100 days. And that whole idea of repetition is to like get inside of that feeling. So then you can articulate it out. You can help offer it as transformation, because that's what brands ultimately do. They offer transformation via understanding a feeling so deeply, so thoroughly, they can externalize it in some way, shape, or form. And I think the question of this is that like art creativity starts as repetition to get inside something. I guess first and foremost, anything you would add to that, or any thought on creativity as repetition?
Yeah, I think I think at an even more basic level, I I think we commonly think about you kind of perfecting your craft, or like, kind of reaching for the ideal form, the platonic version of a thing as coming through repetition. But I think any like singular discrete act can be art itself. If it's, I was having this conversation with a friend a few weeks ago, and I don't know if this is true, but like, uh, Hemingway says, like, just write one true sentence. Like, I think anything done truly, genuinely, authentically, even if it's a very micro thing, is art in and of itself. But I think the way you get better at communicating whatever that ineffable idea is through repetition. I think that's how you start to point and gesture at it a little bit better. But no, I think any like you can have a discrete artistic output, and choose never to do that thing again.
That I feel like is very true too. What about brand as like feeling? Brand as an emergent property of like a feeling that then people look at and go, it's Christmas, so I'm thinking about Coca-Cola and the polar bear, like that's just in my brain, and that's
It's
branding working.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating connection I had never thought of. I think the brands that have the most staying power are the ones that for a century have become kind of synonymous with or associated with this particular event or person or feeling or whatever.
You can't name a brand that is not tied to a feeling, whether it makes you feel smarter, it makes you feel that thing in your heart that you're proud of, that you love, whatever else, it makes you feel comfortable, safe, whatever.
Yes.
Every great brand is tied to an emergent feeling that they've understood how to build everything else around.
I like that. I have nothing to add to that. I think that's a great idea.
You and I have follow-up conversations and emails to trade on this one.
Great.
Well, you've thought about this because you consult on all sorts of stuff like go-to-market and things like that, right, Carly?
Yeah. I mean,
How do you think about this?
I've been thinking a lot about this, thought a lot about brand as a feeling. And I think working with others, especially working with founders, it's like brand is such a hot thing right now. And it's like, I want my brand to be this. And a lot of the time, unless you're the 1%, actually, I don't even think it applies. I was going to say, unless you're like the 1% who hits sort of like lightning in a bottle, but I don't think it applies. Like building brand as a feeling takes time. I mean, Coca-Cola, exactly. It's like, it's a century old. And it's like, I think a lot of people give up on building that brand because it takes a long time. You have to be dedicated and committed to it. And yeah, I think like working with a lot of founders, a lot of people expect that to happen faster.
I want brand now. That's why I hired you. Deliver it to me.
Exactly. And it's really just, yes. What were you going to say, Spencer?
No, there's a big disconnect too, I think, especially I don't know how much you work with tech founders, but like,
yes.
Okay, in tech in particular, when you think about the juxtaposition of the speed of building software, which especially now in the age of AI is like, I could do that today, versus the distribution side of things, which is heavily dependent on the brand value, is, to your point, something that could take forever to do. And there's this kind of like lag or like latency between the two. Product may be great, but nobody knows about it. And it might take 5, 10, 20 years before somebody does.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine who said that it really just takes 5 years to build a brand at all. It doesn't have to be a good brand, but it takes 5 years to build a brand. And she said it like so kind of offhandedly, and I was like, oh my God, that's kind of interesting. And just to think about the idea that, especially when you talk about personal brand or something that is related to your own work, it's like, yeah, you're going to flop. You're going to fail. You're going to think that you are, sharing the most compelling thing and no one's going to care. And like, that's part of it. And I think that is that is you have to put in those reps, and like coming back to just repetition in general, but just like doing it over and over again, even and especially when you fail at it, is so crucial. And going back to the original, like 99% of podcasts stop at episode 20. It's like because it's not famous, because it's not.
It's a low
They-
status job.
They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
get the
and it's
Job
feedback
is a
they
generous
wanted.
term. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
it's a
low
ton of work.
status.
And yeah, you have to find the thing, I think, that makes the brand worth building, and just keep showing up for that over and over again for a long, long, long time.
Yes.
Repetition to reputation. I got to write that down later.
Mm,
Time to
I
play
like
the game.
that.
Time to play the game.
Whoa.
I'm feeling okay about what I guessed on this one. I'm feeling great about the conversation, okay about my answer. That's the safe place to start us. Carly, you're going first. Why do you think I had to introduce you to Spencer Kier here today?
I got to go back to the audience of one, and I have to go back to the idea of having conversations and making connections for like the joy of doing it, and for the opportunity that it allows us to know ourselves better and the world, and to prove ourselves wrong, and to learn. And we learn the most through other people. And so I think that is at the core. Am I correct?
Fine. Listen, wrong answers only. Spencer, go ahead. Your turn. Why do you think I wanted to introduce you to Carly today?
I think we're on very similar pages. I think it's I'm trying to see how like articulately I can put it. It is authentic outreach and conversation across however many domains interest you. I'm trying to think about what fits on the back of the card. That's too
No,
low.
that's
That's
fantastic.
actually really good. Yeah.
With a fat tip Sharpie. I actually like your answer a lot on this one. I like both of yours a lot. Okay, here's what I wrote down. I wrote down network the networkers one at a time, because now, you two, I've got high expectations here. I'm thinking the one at a time thing, that was the key one for me, because you both went deliberately one at a time. But then I was also going between the tech overlap, between some of the other people you've each met that we scratched the surface on that helped pull you along at various steps. This is going to be a fun email thread when I make the official introduction after this. I have high hopes for it. And I feel like, Carly, you're going to love Spencer's quote library, that he is just
Ooh.
like, you need a resource for something. The guy's got quotes for days.
I never have the exact quote, but I know how to go find it.
He knows how to go find it.
I think
And
also no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, conversely, Spencer, I just think Carly is around, her name came up in a bunch of other like side comments and other things where people were like, you have to meet this person for this networking exercise she's doing. You're going to love this story. And that's from prior guests on this show. So here we are. What were you going to say?
No, I think so you had mentioned Sasha. I had him on my podcast a long time ago.
Love that.
And Anne came on. So like, I think we're dancing around similar circles. Now that I've heard you talk about it, I could have sworn I was scrolling through Substack and saw somebody talking about this. So
Very
I
possible.
didn't know your name or associate it to this idea, but had like a vague understanding of it. So yeah, this was incredible, Matt.
Super
Thank you
cool.
so much. Amazing.
This is my personal joy to do things like this. Carly, people want to learn more, bug you on the internet, where they want to network with you. Where would you like them to come find you?
Yeah, I'm on Substack and LinkedIn. My website is carlyvalancy.com, and I'm actually kicking off the next cohort of, I don't know when this will come out, but the Reach Out Party, which is my networking mastermind for people who hate networking. And I just opened up applications for that a couple weeks ago, and it kicks off in March of 2026. But yeah, you can find me all over the place.
Fantastic. Make sure you look Carly up and bug her. Spencer, same question. Where should people bug you on the internet?
I spend most of my time on Twitter, but I have a terrible handle. It's SP1NS1R. So just go to the show notes. I lost my handle a while back. Somebody else took it, and now it's in the ether. And Substack is just Spencer Kier, and then spencerkier.com.
Fantastic. I want to thank both of you so much for being willing participants in my funny little experiment here. You're watching Cultish Creative YouTube. This is Just Press Record. Again, make sure you check out panoptica.ai. I'm Matt Ziegler. That's Carly Valancy. That's Spencer Kier, and we are out.
Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Ziegler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.